Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Magic Mics, proudly sponsored by Mana Traders, as well as Twitch subs and Patreon supporters just like you. My name is Evan Irwin, and get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Power Dragon.
What's up, everybody? And honestly, if there were a week that I could get us canceled, this is probably it, but I don't think I'm going to do it just yet.
Oh,
whoa.
Thanks. We didn't talk about this at all.
No, that's crazy. Whoa.
Hey,
what just
it's
happened?
been like a whole week and 3 days already.
Whoa.
Ruben Bressler.
Man.
The internet's Ruben Bressler.
That's awesome. I want to see whatever's happening just there. That's hilarious.
No.
Nah, we're good.
Oh, Boston TG. Okay, high five, buddy. All right, so yeah, hello everybody. If you missed our pre-show, patrons get access to that extended version right after the show. As soon as we're done here, I'll post that link on Patreon. You guys go check it out. Yesterday we played in Baldur's Gate 3, super fun. You can be in Patreon at any level to check out our Baldur's Gate run. We are like 44 parts into that thing, which is wild, and we're well into Act 3, and it's super fun, and it's great. All right, this week, however, we got the good goods. We got the good stuff, everybody. We got the big breakdown, the first real information about Aetherdrift, and we got to see the mechanics, and we got to see what those were all about, and I guess we can just start there. The first mechanic that they go over is the big one for the set, and that is start your engines. Now, start your engine says if you have no speed, it starts at 1. It increases once each of your turns. When an opponent loses life, max speed is 4. And so a lot of the cards say this, and then they'll have something like max speed, some really awesome ability. So for example, on here is Streaking Oil Gorger. For a black and 4 generic mana, it's a 3/3 common creature vampire with flying and haste. Has start your engines. But at max speed, this creature has lifelink. So flying, vigilance, haste for 5 mana on a 3/3, that's good, clean living. And there's other ones that like turn into like demonic tutors and whatnot. But the idea, essentially, and this was something we talked about yesterday a bit during the gameplay, was what I see in the trend for the last couple of years of Magic was that every new mechanic was making a different kind of thing. They were making shards, they were making power stones, they were making clues, they were making blood tokens, they were making little trinket things all the time. That was just what every set started doing for a while. And now, not only do we have the rings tempting you, now we've got start your engines. And so this kind of trend now feels like things you need to keep track of. And yes, once it gets to 4, you don't care, and it's max speed forever, and you can't. I think there's only one way to lose speed, and they didn't reveal what that was. But regardless, you have this little tracker thing that they're going to have, sort of a card that lets you track speed, and that's great. But how many of these now we have to track this are we going to get before we stop getting? How are we going? How many things are we going to have to track now?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, we survived the one ring or the tracking the ring tempting you, right? We survived dungeons, and to me, dungeons are way more complicated than this.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of all right with it. You're really just moving a marker up 3 times and then you're right. So I'm fine with it. I can keep a 4-sided die next to me or whatever.
Yeah, I was surprised that we got this, especially so soon after the ring tempts you. This feels very similar to the rings tempt. This actually seems like simplistic. The ring tempts you. Feels like we should have gotten this first, and then the ring tempts you would have shown up. But I'm okay with it. It seems like a cool little mini game that you want to have in a racing set. Having an ability to call to start your engines makes perfect sense. I'm on board with that.
Yeah, I think overall, and I've got the token on the screen, which I think is really neat. 1, 2, 3, and you flip it over, and you're at max speed. I think that's cool. I hope it looks really good digitally. I would love to see that as well. But yeah, again, I just to note, I don't think it's like a bad mechanic or anything. I just think that I like to look at trends. I've been around Magic a whole long time, so I'm like, oh, there's this thing with now we're starting to keep track of these little mini games, if you will. And we'll see how far we keep going with that.
I think my issue with the mechanic is just that it's going to be it's going to be hard to just toss something into a deck that cares about max speed or whatever, right?
Sure.
It's almost like I need to have 3 or 4 cards, sets of 3 or 4 of them in the deck, so I can hit one early and start building the speed up. So when I get the other cards, right? Because if you just get the 3 or 4 mana thing on turn 4, and you're like, okay, well, I'm never going to realize the potential of this card,
right?
It's just not going to happen.
Right. And something we spoke about a little bit on the pre-show that I thought was really interesting was that this feels like the first mechanic in quite a bit, I feel, that is very much geared to 60 card constructed formats.
Yes.
If you're banking on moving your speed up once on your turn after you let 3 people take their turn and they go boop, and 3 people take their turn and you go boop, like, that feels like it's going to take forever. Versus in a 60 card game, often many times these cards that have, start your engines give you the ability to like plink your opponent or give your other creatures trample or some other way to like make sure that extra damage happens. And at least I appreciate that. But let's keep moving on here to the next mechanic, which is exhaust. And this is something they've been meddling with rather over the course of like the past year and a half ish, maybe a couple
Longer
years.
than that. They've been messing around this design space.
Once per game thing.
Yeah, like a little while.
And they finally just keyworded it, right?
Yeah.
And for what it's worth, I think it sucks because in my brain there for a minute I was like, oh, we can only use it once per turn, but no, as it says, like you can use it only once. So this is once per game abilities.
Once ever.
For example, Prowl Catcher Specialist is a red and generic mana 2/1, a common goblin warrior that has haste. So 2 mana 2/1 haste. Okay. You exhaust for a red and 3 generic mana : you put 2+1/+1 counters on it, and now it's a 4/3 haste. So 4/3 haste for 6 mana ain't that exciting, but over time and you have mana to spare and you know what to do with it, well, pump it into this thing and off you go.
Yeah, like we've had these types of abilities before. We've had whatever the dragon was that you could pay one time and it got the +3 or whatever what it was.
Sure.
We had the Ravnica mechanic for the blue-green stuff, I think, where it was like monstrous maybe, where you pay the cost and then they get the thing one time.
Sure.
So it's like we've had it before, but I actually kind of am more bothered by exhaust than I am the start your engines as far as like remembering, tracking, whatever, because a lot of these are just really cheap costs that are just good for doing things. So you kind of have to remember, like, oh, did we give everything haste and put the counter on that guy? Like, is that counter from the ability or is that from the, something else? So, like, I don't think it'll be a problem, but like as far as comparing the two, I have more issue with exhaust than I do with the start your engines.
Well, of course, they also have a green true drop that lets you replay your exhaust abilities kind of as much as you want.
Yeah, they're gonna like further complicates that, right?
You kind of always have 1 or 2 cards that allow you to repeat the set's keyword. I like exhaust as design space. I think that it makes perfect sense for the flavor of the world and for the vibe of the planes. I think this is the perfect one actually for this world.
I mean, the name, like exhaust, just like Chandra's Ignition as a special guest. Like, it is time for the remix of Ignition. We discussed this.
Oh, Stormbreast Dragon. That was the dragon I was thinking of with Monstrosity. Yeah,
and Monstrosity technically was kind of the first of this built into a mechanic, right? I get that. But they've also, I think, over the past few years, maybe 3 or 4 particularly, was the use this only once per game or whatever, like just called it out like that versus saying like, let's just keyword it and have it be that way. Which is neat. And I also appreciate they were going to use, like, I think it said turbo. They were going to use the keyword, but it doesn't work well in other sets. To have like turbo in an Innistrad set would be weird.
Right.
That's true.
But exhaust, you exhaust things in all kinds of different ways, right?
Yeah.
So I'll take that. Vehicles, of course, are the giant bit that's coming back with the set, as you would expect. I was wrong in my my guess that there would be a vehicle in every pack. As far as I know, that's not the case. It might be the case just like as a,
I was going to say it might just happen out of coincidence because there's so many.
Right. You can't kind of get around it, but they're not sort of specifically saying there's a vehicle in every pack or whatever. The other bit I thought was interesting from the video, the way Mark Rosewater was explaining the design part of it, which was vehicles can't just be vehicles. They need to do something, have some impact, have some sort of flavor to the game, some triggers that can happen or whatever, or some stuff that you can pay mana for, just to help kind of keep the game moving and whatnot. And I appreciate that as well.
Well, yeah, because otherwise nobody's going to play them. Like, I mean, you're just going to play this dumb artifact that unless I have another creature, it doesn't do anything.
And I mean, this is a really interesting example because Midnight Mangler is a blue and generic mana for a 3/3 common vehicle. During turns other than yours, this vehicle is an artifact creature. So a 2 mana 3/3 with more or less, quote unquote, defender, which we've seen many times throughout the years. That's a classic trope we've seen in tons and tons of sets. And this one still has crew too. So technically it doesn't have defender, but it kind of acts like it does because you got to give some resources in order to make it a 3/3 you can attack with. But I'm totally okay with that. And I think this is a wonderful design.
Yeah. I mean,
What's
this is the
Mhm.
moat piranhas for the set. Like, I'm happy
Mm.
with the way that they've sort of turned vehicles into a downside in some way. Like, rather than having a rather than having it be every vehicle is kind of the same and it's always you get some sort of reward. Instead, it's baseline good, and then they take something away, which I think is very interesting.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same boat there. It's interesting because one of the reasons recently you even try to play some vehicles, like, okay, well, after a sweeper happens, I still have a dude, then it's just find a creature I can attack with like a 5 power creature or whatever. This kind of doesn't get to do that, right? Because it's going to be a creature when that thing goes off on your opponent's side. So you almost
Yeah,
have to build differently, including this, which I don't have a problem with. I think it's cool that you're getting different ideas and concepts and ways to play with vehicles that we didn't have before.
right.
I appreciate that. I think previously the way that it feels like they were looked at was, vehicles had to have really good stats. That was their thing.
Mhm.
You were giving up the fact that they weren't a creature all the time because they boosted these like giant stats, the 1 mana 7/11 or whatever. You know what I mean? But now they're like, okay, they're not quite as crazy in the stat column, but they give you things to do or give things that are happening on your turn or on other people's turn to make them interesting and not just this weird little stat stick that you hopefully turn on as long as you have other creatures.
Right.
So, moving on here, there's mounts and saddles. Remember mounts and saddles from old
I
Outlaws of
do.
Thunder Junction? Well, they coming
Yeah,
back.
I
I'm
think
okay
that
with this.
that's a fun thing that they've done where we've now combined vehicles and mounts in the same set. The pilots can now ride both mounts and saddles,
Yep.
which I think is a cool change.
Which is awesome.
I'm very excited for the crossover between driving cars and riding rides. I think that it's a very fun concept.
Yeah, and I mean you've got with saddling, and whatnot. Also comes some silly, ridiculous vehicles they threw out here like Valor's flagship. Your Grease Fangs will be very happy finding this
Yeah.
ridiculous card. 3 white, 4 generic mana for a mythic 7/7 legendary vehicle with flying, first strike, and lifelink. And okay, these are
Oh boy.
terrific stats that make me happy. It crews for 3.
Yeah.
Weird. What power is Grease Fang? And it
Yeah.
also has cycling of a white, 2 generic mana, and X. So it's got Decree of Justice just stapled on it. When you cycle this card, make X/1/1 colorless pilot creature tokens with, quote, this token saddles, mounts, and crews vehicles as though its power were 2 greater. So it's just upside on upside. It doesn't just make 1/1 soldiers, it makes 1/1s with cool upsides that have to deal with vehicles that you're probably playing in your deck anyway. Like, this thing's nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
I'm all
fun.
for this. We haven't, like, as far as saddle mounts aren't really getting played that much.
No.
So it's kind of cool to see. So I think there's like Seraphic Steed and whatever the
Yeah.
3 mana 2/2 that puts a +1/+1 counters, like that guy. Those are like the only two I think I see anybody play with at all. Like nobody even
The
touches
red
the other.
the red 6-drop guy, right? That makes copies or whatever.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that goes in just the Smuggler Surprise deck. I think it's the only deck playing it.
It's
Like,
fun for its deck,
yeah.
right? It's
So like
neat.
I'm cool with having more mounts. Like give people a reason to play them. And if pilots just get to ride them as a bonus, all right, I'm down.
Sure, why not, right? Like give those cool bonuses. And I think they found out what it was Kamigawa, right? That originally did that, like cruise for 2 more or whatever. They had
Hmm.
tokens that did
Oh
that.
yeah, yeah,
And so
yeah.
now it's saddles or it cruise. Like, let's go, keep it going. And cycling's on here. Obviously, we just talked about cycling, but cycling, first of all, in the vehicles death race set, I mean, it's cycling.
Of
But
course.
cycling it should just be in basically every set. I'm okay with it being stable to a
But
variety of cards,
especially for the wheels set.
but
For
especially for the
sure.
wheel set. They
For
gotta
sure.
go. They go round and round, as it were.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
there is that.
Very good.
Maybe we could have got motorcycling and then you cycle a vehicle and you get a bonus.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. But yeah, they threw up some new cards. I'm going to bring up some new cards to chitter chat about. You guys can talk about ones you would like to bring up. I want to start with what I would describe as probably, I don't know, the most, I don't know, well-known card from what the set is going to have, my guess, in terms of the future. And that is a little card called the Aether Spark. And that card is bananas. I thought this card was good. I had misread this card. I didn't read the card correctly. Normal Magic thing to do, right? That's what you do around here. Is that you read a card and then you go back and you go, wait. That says what now? That happens when now? The Aetherspark. This was the big draw of the whole set. It was a legendary artifact planeswalker equipment. What in the hell does that even mean, y'all? Let's talk about what it does. First of all, it's 4 generic mana for a 4 loyalty planeswalker. As long as it is attached to a creature, it can't be attacked and has, quote, whenever equipped creature deals combat damage during your turn, put that many loyalty counters on the Aetherspark. Okay. I didn't really pay that much attention to whenever the equipped creature deals combat damage during your turn. Combat damage gets blocked, cool. Hit their face, great. Either way, you're adding that many counters. Let's do some math. It has a +1 to attach it to up to 1 target creature you control. Put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. -5: draw 2 cards. -10: add 10 mana of any one color. Y'all, you play an elf. You play a 3/3. You play this the next turn. It becomes a 4/4. You smash. It has 8 counters now. Next turn, you don't even have to +1. Next turn, you just smash to add 4 more counters. Now it has 12, and you just added 10 mana on that turn. Y'all, the saving grace of this card, the only thing that keeps this remotely in check is that every single color has a way to kill this thing or deal with this thing because they friggin' need it. Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
I mean,
go
ahead.
Very cool design, first of all. Just a fun card. Like the type line alone is worth the price of admission. But the ability that it has with these big numbers is exactly what you want. These big absurd numbers and go crazy in terms of like I go up to 10, I go down to 2, I go up to 7, I go down to 1, I go up to 12. You want that for the racing set. I think that makes perfect sense. If you're going to name something the Aetherspark, you need to have something big and exciting, and this is big and exciting. Nice GT vibes here, honestly. If you're paying this much mana for this much of an effect, you're hoping that you're getting something big and splashy out of it, and you're definitely getting something big and splashy.
Yeah, I think for me, like this is the card I think I want to be wrong the most about. Like I want it to be better than I think it is. Like, and that's crazy to say, but like, but I playing through a lot of standard right now is I'm trying to figure out like what type of deck ultimately wants this card, right? Because there's so much spot removal and other things going on, and you're trying to outrace some of these red decks and things like. Do I want to take a turn, whether that's turn 3, turn 4, to play this card, to put it on something for a +1/+1 and like hope it gets through, or that I even have a thing to put it on? You know, like don't get me wrong, because if I can't minus and I don't have a creature, then I'm playing 4 mana to make it a 5 loyalty and get nothing.
Yeah, you want to have something for it to.
You know what I mean? Like,
right?
That's what I'm saying. Like, I think the upside is way up there. Sure. Right? Don't get me wrong. I think it's way up there. But I'm wondering, like, what's the average ceiling we're gonna hit? You know, like, looks like on this thing.
So
go ahead.
So let's go. So here's my magical Christmas land. We start with turn 1 Land Werewolf. We go turn 2 big green 3-drop.
Sure.
Some 4/4.
3/3/4/4.
Yeah. So then turn 3 we play Aetherspark, equip it up, put 5 counters on it. Let's say 4 counters on it. Right?
Sure.
Then the next turn we either can draw 2 cards or get it up to 10
and still have it stay around. Like you're not, it doesn't go away with that 10 mana.
So I think that the ceiling is there. The problem is you're right. We're like by the time we've attacked, we're dead to a red deck. By the time we've attacked, they've shot the sheriff, the creature that we equipped our Aetherspark to.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, you got 2 cards basically out of that exchange.
And right, and
like you spent all that mana, you got 2 cards. This thing's left with like, I don't know, 4 loyalty or something or whatever. Like, is that good enough?
All I'm saying is, well, first of all, someone noted in chat like Black has artifact removal. You wouldn't want to run it. Black has planeswalker removal. That's how.
Yeah, exactly. Multiple things do. Like go for the throw or a Get Lost still gets played.
Yeah. Get Lost is this. You know, Hero's Downfall just got reprinted and so on. Like, but with such a
Bitter
crazy
Triumph, I think, is the other one
Yeah.
as well, the black one.
right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you're going to have a situation where Doomblade ruins your day. Like,
Sure,
sorry, it
sure.
happens. But
Yeah.
if they better have it, and if they don't, this card explodes in 2 turns. And it's that amount of power that quickly that makes me go, Jesus, this thing's scary. Because they
Yeah,
didn't say it
but
deals combat damage to a player, it just
sure.
combat.
But it's
Yeah.
not that unreal for you to play this on turn 3 or 4, and then you're like, okay, I'll pay the 1 to equip, and then they just like kill the thing you try to equip.
They do. And that's
Right.
going to
So now
happen.
you just have this thing sitting here with 5 loyalty on it. And I guess maybe a Llanowar elf if you did that on turn 3, so it's just like hope for the best.
Maybe.
I'm trying to find creatures that have hexproof.
There's some that already exist in green and white, but that deck already does well with just like the smaller, cheaper auras that you're putting on them, right? To give them
true.
+2, give them trample, give them flying, draw a card.
Yeah.
Like that's what I'm saying. Like I think this card is still, like I said, ceiling's huge. I just don't know how often we can get near the ceiling even.
Well, let's talk about another card that has a wonderfully, wonderfully high ceiling that I think is absolutely terrific, and that is Ketramos, the New Dawn. This card is dope. It is a black, white, and generic mana. 3 mana for a 4/4 mythic legendary god with menace, lifelink, and indestructible. But it can attack or block unless there are 7 or more cards in exile. Note, not your exile, not
Yep.
your opponent's exile. All the exiles are added together, okay? Whenever 1 or more cards are put into exile from graveyards and or the battlefield during your turn, you draw a card and you lose a life. You can just rest in peace on turn 2, and this thing is already probably halfway there or whatever, because you just play Magic and things go to graveyards. And in the meantime, things go into your graveyard or getting exiled and you're drawing cards and losing life. And by the time this thing turns back on, you can gain all that life back with your menace, lifelink, indestructible god.
Yeah.
It's a cool card. I actually thought each of the gods they previewed so far were pretty sweet.
Pretty rad.
Because they play so differently than the other ones, and I appreciated the fact that they weren't actually enchantments this time.
Right.
So it also limits ways you can get rid of them, which is kind of nice.
True.
Yeah. The gods are less concepts and definitely more physical beings. As it in what's the new Avishkar? There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool design. You're right. I don't think that this is a particularly hard a barrier to cross. I think it's a very exciting card. You just need to feed it. And even if you're just playing it and waiting for it on layaway, I think you're going to be happy.
I guess we have to refer to them more as like Amonkhet gods or Theros gods, right? Like where Theros gods are like enchantments and conceptual, then like Amonkhet gods, just like, no, we're just here among you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that Conquest notes in the chat that they can still crew vehicles,
Yes.
Can't attack.
They can drive.
Because these are still creatures. They don't have the clause of like they're not creatures unless you have the devotion. They're still creatures. They just can't do anything.
Incredible. Yeah. I love that.
Right, so let's see them. Let's go ahead and talk about how when they kind of wove the two things together, and that is with Hazoret Godseeker. This is a 2-mana 5/3 indestructible haste god. Yeah, it's mythic. So it's a 2-mana 5/3 and indestructible haste has start your engines. Okay, and here's how it helps turn that on. For 1 generic mana tap : target creature with power 2 or less can't be blocked this turn. There you go. And Hazoret can't attack or block unless you have max speed. So it is helping you turn on that max speed. It is helping you pretty much immediately. Yes, you play this on turn 2. You got to wait an extra turn to use the ability and so on. But still, at that point, you're at 2 and maybe you'll get to max speed before you know it. And then you have an indestructible haste god. And every Hazoret you draw thereafter, if they were to exile it some way, is already turned on. So this card also seems very exciting.
Yeah, definitely a different flavor of red card here. Probably goes in the sideboard of current red decks as a old like a way to survive to the late game. If you manage to be able to keep up with your removal and you're running out of gas, this new Hazoret is a very good way to be able to not only get past an annoying blocker if you really need to be able and then level up your start your engines, but also have a body on the board after a wrath or some sort of big removal effect.
Yeah, I think this is kind of what we were talking about with the mechanic earlier, is that you almost have to play some number of other things that care about moving up your speed. So when you do actually get to the point where Hazoret would be able to do something, right? You want to be able to get it down, get in there for 5,
Right.
if you're able to. Otherwise, you're just going to be taking a long time to get there. But I could see a world where the red decks change it up a little bit and maybe play like 2 copies of this. Wouldn't be that unreal.
Right, like so obviously you want to play a turn 1 something. Turn 1
Yeah.
something, so you can play this on turn 2, your speed goes to 1, you smack them, your
Mm-hmm.
speed goes to 2, you're
Right.
already halfway to the goal. Next turn
Right.
you
Yep.
can make that 1 drop unblockable with this ability, and then the
Yep.
turn after that, hit them with a burn spell and then attack with both of them and go
Exactly.
nuts, right? There's your magical Christmas land. So I'll take it for what it's worth, but I really
Yeah.
appreciate the design and I thought it was really cool. Are there any
Cool
cards
piece of
you
art
guys
too,
want
man.
to chitter chat about while we're here?
Oh my
I can
gosh.
keep
I
going.
mean,
it's
so-
all
not
y'all.
so
today.
many things.
Not today. We'll talk about it in the top tens. We'll talk about it when we've got a full spoiler.
Sure.
There's some very exciting stuff.
Yeah, there's a
that is
lot in
coming
this
out.
set that I like.
Well, I definitely want to
Yeah.
shout out the fact that Chrome Mox is coming to Arena.
Yeah.
Sure.
Being
Yep.
special guests, very excited about that, which is
Yep.
it's just fun. And
You know what? Let's go ahead and talk about loot while we're here, because we
Sure.
might actually have a loot that people want to play for the first
Right.
time.
It's true.
That's true.
like this card, 5 mana. First off, the casting cost is a little bit quirky, but we have a bunch of multi-lands, so whatever.
Mhm.
So it's 2 colorless, green, blue, red for a 2/4 double strike vigilance haste. So they're like giving you every opportunity of like, even if you don't activate this damn thing, we're gonna put so many abilities on it for this cost that like it's at least intriguing. But then it comes with your choice, green, blue, or red mana. So you either get a Black Lotus, an Ancestral, or a Lightning Bolt, and you get to use those each once per game.
I mean, I
yeah,
guess you could.
pretty
Yeah,
good.
while you could say historic ritual, I would rather say it's Lotus.
Yeah, it is.
But
It is.
this is Agatha's Soul Cauldron just made.
Oh,
Everybody, that's hilarious.
They're just
everybody
made
can
to
be
work
trying
with
to
each
do
other.
this
Yes.
for sure.
Oh, Agatha's Soul Cauldron with this is
Yeah,
very
that was
cute.
everybody's first thought.
I
So I
love
expect you're
that.
going to see that a lot on week 1.
I mean,
Amazing.
if I'm gonna try anything, it's Agatha's Soul Cauldron in this thing. Like,
Yeah.
it's a match made in heaven. You're going to loot it into your graveyard. You're going to exile it with the Soul Cauldron. Maybe you're playing some ridiculous 5-color and you have that 3-mana god going around. I don't know. Go
Sure.
nuts. Do you?
But you know
But-
what? A lot of those decks that care about keyword abilities or whatever that you get to copy
too.
and whatever, like this comes with 3 good ones.
Mhm.
Double strike, vigilance,
Yeah.
haste.
This card's also just fine by itself. Like you're probably
Yeah.
not playing this on for 5 mana. You're probably playing this with a 6th mana up.
Right.
But when you do, you still just get to attack for 4, which is
Yeah.
nice. And then you can pass the turn and either have a bolt available or draw 3 cards or whatever.
Like,
I
how
think
wild
it's
is
a
it
good
that
card.
even if they have removal, you're like, okay, well, at least I get 3 cards.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Like,
Like, that's
Maybe I'll draw another loot.
Right.
Yeah.
As our you notes, Soul Cauldron even lets you use mana of any color to pay
Yes.
for any of these abilities.
yes.
Wow. Wow. Amazing.
It is fantastic. So, oh no, like each creature can only ancestral recall once. Well, crap.
Yeah,
I guess
exactly.
it sucks to be me, I guess. Like, card is very good, and it is nice to see loot that doesn't suck. Honestly, like,
Yeah.
loot has been pretty.
But you know, this is kind of what
Underwhelming.
happened with Kellen. Like the first couple, we sort of went, we didn't really get to play with. Then, like the last couple, everybody went, oh yeah, I'll put those in a deck.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fine. I will say that, one last bit here because this is a pretty simple card. Muragonda Raceway is
Yeah.
a card
Mm,
that
yeah.
makes me go, because it has start your engines, and I do appreciate, as Pharmacist Judge note, that if you play multiple cards with start your engines, your speed doesn't increase. Like,
Yeah.
it may start at 1, it'll
Okay.
give you 1, but you're there. Okay, so when I start your engines, tap to add a colorless mana, a wingding, and max speed, tap to add 2 colorless mana. Is this good?
Maybe.
Maybe, like, I don't know, right? I mean, this.
I literally had that thought of just like it's like if I'm already playing that type of deck,
Right.
and some of these things also have like pay 6 or pay 10. I think the green red dude is like pay 12. It's like 10 and
Right.
a red green or something.
Jeez.
Like if you have max speed, all right, then maybe you want a card like this. Just
Yes.
every little bit of mana is going to help.
Right,
But
like our nut draw will be the 1 red mana 1 drop, right?
Well,
Yeah,
our
it
nut
is-
draw is Ginger Brute, but
Well, I mean,
You know.
play this and then the new
Yeah.
Hazoret,
Sure.
right? Play this
Sure.
new Hazoret, smack your max
Sure.
speed, use it your speed's at 2, right?
Yeah.
So you can get there quickly. But at that point, right? Like, at that point in the game, is it good enough?
So yeah, it takes us till turn what 5 if we're playing this on turn 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, like here's
Uh,
my problem with it is that it's a rare. Like if we're being honest,
Right.
like that's my biggest issue at. When I saw it, I thought it was an uncommon. And then
I
I
did
went
too.
back and looked and went, "Oh crap, this is a rare?" Like this is gonna be
Yeah,
an awful rare for people to open. I hate to
yeah.
feel bad for the average player who's gonna open a booster pack and this is gonna be a rare.
So we need to play damaging cards on turns 2, 3, and 4 in order to
Right.
get this to max ability. And then the payoff is we have 5 mana on turn 4. I mean, seems
I
fine.
mean, I guess
All
if you
right.
drew multiples, that matters, I guess, because it's
Right.
not legendary. It's like, maybe.
And also, we need to deal damage before we get that 5th mana, so it's not like
Yeah,
this doesn't even really help us cast Reality Smasher.
exactly.
So I don't know.
That yeah, because it was rare. I appreciate Power Dragon point out because it's one thing when this is uncommon. It's like, oh, it's kind of cute. Maybe it matters. It probably doesn't matter. It's whatever. But Morayer says like maybe I'm underestimating this. Maybe this is really fantastic, or maybe they needed to do this because it gets a little out of hand in limited environments where you can easily trigger max speed, I guess, versus construct. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. But
And like I said, I'm willing to be wrong on it, but it doesn't feel great. I mean, like just being honest, like I don't
yeah,
like the fact it's rare, and even in the decks I would play it, I don't like. Honestly, this is kind of like the desert that you have to like bounce a thing and it gives you 2 mana or whatever.
Right.
Like
yeah.
that just never really works out well for me, and we don't even see that card in a lot of different decks, even though it also got some hype.
Those cards would see play together, certainly, because they're both wingding lands.
Yeah, that's
But
true.
but here we are.
Yeah, I think there's a point at which like I appreciate the start your engines thing and the way that it kind of works. It escalates over time. It gives us some cool payoffs. I get all that. I understand all that. But also, the competitive Magic player in me is like, you're making me wait 3 turns, minimum before I can get this really cool thing. So it's tough
I
to be
I
like in
think
3 turns I can actually get this really cool option to do something neat.
I think this is the other issue for me is I am, at least so far, if I'm not mistaken, everything we've seen with Start Your Engines has its own way to do damage,
Well, not this
right?
land.
Like this land doesn't. So
Right.
like
That's true.
it
I guess
needs
Hazoret
something else.
Hazoret supports the ability
Yeah,
to
exactly.
deal damage, but yes. But the
I-
opportunity cost is low too.
Sure, but are we playing that many colorless things? And there may be a
Right.
build, right, with all the vehicles and whatever. But if we're playing that many colorless things or things that need that much generic mana
Right.
Right.
to justify having, I guess we need 4 copies of this in our deck.
And we'll finish up this bit, but from something I saw both chats, both Twitch and YouTube have noted that Stoneforge Mystic can now go get a Planeswalker.
Oh, hey.
We did it.
I
Good job,
mean,
everybody.
okay.
It's fine. It's whatever. I
Yeah,
think it's
exactly. I'm like,
I just think it's
well,
silly. It's not going to
like-
break anything.
that falls in the category of like just because we can, just doesn't mean we
Mhm.
should.
Hey
Like,
man, don't knock it till we try it. That's all I'm
Mhm.
saying. Go get in a Planeswalker you can put into play at instant speed into their turn.
and we put that on the Stoneforge Mystic to bash for 2.
No, you'd put it on something scarier than that, right? Like I'd hope. But anyway.
Maybe.
Maybe,
Like,
I don't know.
yeah.
I'm just thinking, I'm just saying words. All right.
Yeah,
here
I
we
think
go.
I'd still rather have the swords. I think the swords are still better.
The swords are still pretty fantastic. Let's move on our first pick. Out of our first pick, rather to get out to the Townsfolk, talk about some community issues. Thanks to our sponsor, Mana Traders, the best tool to enhance your Magic Online experience. Use the code MagicMikes_08V. That's 08V as in Victor for 10% off your next subscription with Mana Traders. Tell them we sent you. We appreciate them sponsoring the show. As we move on here to a really cool tool that I got introduced to via one Aaron Campbell, who mentioned it on Blue Sky. I want to put the link here in the chats. Both of our chats are chatting, and it is really interesting. It is a way for you to look at your mana base and for it to tell you basically how good or how bad your mana base is. And I was like, that's really rad. So, like, just to give you an example, as we can see here. Oops, oh crap. Well, let me download. I'll take a picture of this. But either way, it's really cool because it shows things like your cast rate, your current mana base. For example, if you could add an extra planes, you would eliminate 11% of the delay to get your weakest color online, which is white in the deck that she put up there. So I thought that was super rad, and I just love stuff like this.
I feel like I need to put this to the test.
Of course.
Mostly, but don't get me wrong, I still think it's a neat tool. I think the problem, and I think if you're not good at deck building, just anything that can help you, I think is a positive. So like I don't want to sound like I'm knocking the tool at all. But I do feel like when I first see it, I'm like, okay, but how does it account for like the synergy of different cards and like what's important to have before the other thing and like things like that you're just not gonna be able to account for. But I think generally, if you just need help with your mana base, because that is a question that comes up quite a bit with new players. Like I don't know how much of each color to have in or what I should do with my lands or whatever. It'd be cool if this becomes like a universal tool that we just kind of go, yeah, use the snail. Like go put your mana in there.
There was and relating to this a little bit, there was a thread today on the Magic TCG subreddit where someone was talking about how they didn't really understand how best of one hand smoothing worked. And they thought it was not just hand smoothing, it was like deck smoothing, right? Where you would
There's a lot of people that believe that.
right, who think there's going to be a mix of lands and spells and so on. And so they literally said they tried decks with like 22 lands and kept losing. And they tried for decks with 23 to 24 and kept winning. And then won the most with like 25 or 26 lands because after those opening hands get smooth, nothing is smooth whatsoever. It's just random and you could just die and never draw another land ever. So keeping that in mind is something that people might not be aware of, A, and two, I thought it was cool in terms of this kind of conversation.
Yeah, welcome to Magic. Why you see these deck lists that have like 24 to 27 land. When you see all the pro players do it, there's a reason for it.
That reminds me of a story. I was at a pro tour. I can't remember which one. It might have been Amsterdam, but Kai Buddha, the ultimate player of the year, Kai Buddha, fantastic Magic player. I was watching him play, and he was building a limited deck or whatever, and he had 18, maybe even 19 lands in it. And he was showing it to me, and I was looking through it, and I was like, man, you got a lot of lands here.
Yeah.
And he said, Evan, the only way I can lose is if I don't draw my mana. And I'm just like, oh.
Yep.
Yep.
You know what that is? That's that wizard at the end of Willow going, the power was always right here.
Yeah.
Like
there's another famous quote from Kai. I want to say this was the Urza's Legacy, Urza's Saga Worlds in New York, I think, where I think he was quoted as, there was some quote where he was like, now you're playing 25 lands in this deck when most people are playing 23. Why are you doing that? And his quote was something along the lines of, I like casting my spells.
Yeah.
Which I thought was great. I mean, just simple.
Sometimes that's all it is. It's just like the most obvious explanation.
Yeah.
Well, that's what you get from
people
the goats, man.
People see some of my decks. Why do you have 61 cards? Greed, man. That's the answer. Yeah. There's no real explanation. It's just like I didn't want to cut anything. There's an extra card.
Because I can. That's
but they're like, no, really, why? I'm like, no, that's it. Like, there's no secret. It's just like I wanted to play one more card, so it's in there.
All right, let's move on here to Desperate Ravings, a little rant Ravings in the community here. VML unfortunately announced that they were not going to provide funding or invites to organize play events that they work on in the future. Excuse me. VML was a organization to provide a fun-friendly and competitive tournament organization for people of marginalized genders. They had spots at like Magic Cons and whatnot, and they had events where they would provide Pro Tour invites, and those Pro Tour invites essentially cost Wizards $500 at minimum, because that's isn't that like your appearance fee and whatnot for Pro Tours, if I recall this
something like that?
Yeah. So it was real money they were having to provide in terms of these invites, and of course you can discuss the timing and something politics and how things are changing all you want, but either way, it always sucks when something's being taken away that was a communal favorite, even if it wasn't super crazy popular.
Yeah, from what I understand, they knew about this for a while. They've just been trying to get funding elsewhere.
Yeah.
And they said even though they thought they could get it, the ultimate reality of just not having the invites kind of makes it where you take away, I guess, the legitimacy of it a bit.
Right.
And they're not sure if they wanted to keep going, under that. So I get it. And
prizes
are
great, right? But
because really you kind of get two options, right? You either have the invites so you can get your people on the big stage, or you get enough funding that you have an absurd cash prize, right? To add the legitimacy. You're one or the other. And if you don't have either, that's tough.
So it always sucks when something goes away, and they've been doing it now for 4 years? It was?
Yeah, for a bit. I know they started doing it during the pandemic at some point.
I believe that's when it started. So kind of an end of an era there, and unfortunate to hear. which is always bad. Let's move over here to some splash damage. It's not magic, but it's close. It's close enough. I thought this was crazy rad. The TCG Card Shop Simulator, which is a very popular app these days on Steam, it is got official integration with Ultra Pro products. You can now list them and show them in your store and sell them. And I don't know which way the money flowed, right? Like, did someone pay for this? Did they just give them permission? I don't know. But I think this is absolutely brilliant. I think if Dragon Shield were to get in on this, it would be a good idea. Let them show the different types of products. Let them be more popular in areas than others or whatever. I mean, you could make it really interesting. But like this kind of gives this kind of legitimacy and immersion that you want this type of game to provide you. I thought that was really awesome.
Oh, the minute I saw like these game store simulator things, I was literally just like, why is not every game company on this? Like, if you're a big board game, but there should be some Catan on the shelf, right?
Oh, yeah.
There should be Chessex with their dice should be sponsoring some stuff, like,
right?
Because I watched somebody goof around with one of these one times, and I went on a deep dive, and like these things are damn popular.
Yeah,
like there's a lot of people playing these games, so it's just like, yeah, like why not? And I'm sure it can't cost that much to work with those licenses because it's not like they're huge AAA companies or anything.
Right, and this game isn't selling like millions of copies. I can imagine, maybe hundreds, maybe tens of thousands, but that's great. But yeah,
but there's some brand building to be done there for sure. Even if you're just the top of mind when they go think about buying sleeves or dice or deck boxes or whatever,
right?
It's worth it if it doesn't cost. I mean, each of these companies spend so much more advertising online and Google ads and Facebook or whatever. Like, toss these guys a few $100, maybe $1,000, and call it good. You know?
Yeah. Or like, make an ad spend out of it, give them $100 or a couple $100 a month or whatever. It doesn't have to be a lot. If anything, just giving them the license to use your products and your images of products is such a huge win for the company. Like,
it legitimizes their game, makes it look sweet.
Yeah, it makes their game look better, makes you look good, has these people virtually interact with your products. Like, I don't see how this is bad in any fashion. I think this is amazing. Yeah, this is a great idea. Keep going. That's what I'll say. And then as we gnashed teeth last week of the TikTok ban, and then the TikTok ban showed up, and then I was literally telling my daughter, I was like, that TikTok ban won't last a week. And then she looked at her phone and said, Dad, they lifted the TikTok ban.
Yeah.
So
I believe it.
It was a weird, scary time and whatnot. And yes, Marvel Snap also got caught up in it, which was
so strange. But that was because
multiple mobile games were caught in it. It wasn't even just them.
Was it more than Snap? I actually didn't see more than Snap.
There was a couple others that got caught in there.
I can definitely see it. And from what we can tell, Marvel Snap had no idea that Newverse, which was their publisher owned by Byte, was it Scentbyte? ByteDance, thank you. And so, that chain ran down to the part where BT dubs, when TikTok stops, you stop.
Yeah, it's like, by the way, they own like 20% of us. So, like here comes the hammer.
Weird time for content creation and social media for us to be living in right now. We're in a space where the old standbys that were popular for the last 20 years or so are not the same as they once were. I no longer have a Twitter. I'm probably about to try to get rid of my Meta stuff, Facebook and Instagram. Not everyone is on that train, but they're certainly on the decline. There was a big move towards RedNote or Redbook, which was the literal Chinese state social media app.
Actually, can I talk about that for a second?
Sure.
I came across somebody who was talking about the app as a previous user.
Yeah.
And I didn't get to deep dive on this, so I'm just taking this person's word for it. But they said that it was originally being used by a lot of Chinese Americans to kind of stay connected to family heritage, whatever, still in China. So when all the Americans came over, it kind of screwed up the situation. Even though they were being friendly and everybody was, welcoming them.
Sure.
They were already debating having to create separate servers for more of the English speakers and the Mandarin speakers, just so the app could still be used the way it was intended to.
Right. Yeah.
Now, a bunch of that ended up being nothing because everybody's back on TikTok and it's whatever, but,
Well, we'll see, because TikTok has now shifted some of its politics and shifted some of its algorithm.
And it's got a 70-day, I guess, at this point, by the time people are listening to it,
And
tracker waiting to see what happens.
people are really enjoying RedNote. It is a good app, demonstrably. Now there are security concerns, right? There's security concerns with your Apple, right? There's security concerns everywhere. So educate yourself if you plan to download this application. But people are nice there. There's less ads than there tend to be on TikTok and Instagram. You're certainly getting less AI BS shoved in your grill on this application. And then, Blue Sky is trying to take over where Twitter was once the end all be all, and a lot of big places are sort of leaving Twitter and avoiding Twitter. Reddit, not the least among them. The magic Reddit TCG saying that they're not going to accept Twitter links and things like that. So there's a big shift in social media that we haven't seen since really Facebook came into the forefront, since really about 25 years ago, 20 years ago.
And
Yeah,
the
This
way
is
I'm tracking right now, there's a couple of apps that are working with the AT protocol for Blue Sky, and they're both getting very close. There's one called Flashes, I think we talked about
Yep.
last week.
right.
And then there's another one that's something like Solar Light or something like that, some name in that space that they're also very close doing some beta testing and stuff as well. Though I think they're going to be iOS only first. So that's a little thing that people are hung up on. But we could have some potential TikTok competitors or replacement apps for Instagram at the very least, probably within the next. I wouldn't even be surprised what happens by middle of next month, but for sure by the end of March, the way things are going.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of sort of competition in that market. I think there's a lot of kind of paranoia with where you get your news and how it's
Hmm.
kind of shaped and provided to you and what's pushed and what's not. And the fact that like all of a sudden everybody started following like Mark Zuckerberg and Trump or whatever out of
Yeah,
nowhere. And it's like, wait,
yeah,
what?
yeah.
It's getting weird. It's getting weird. And quite frankly, your Heil salute thing is about the most un-American thing I can possibly imagine. So no one wants to move the Overton window into that realm that I know of, thank God.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's got really gross. So
But you know what?
Blue Sky
We
is
haven't,
fantastic, and I've been having a really lot of fun with it.
to Ruben's point, we haven't really had a need actively to move off of some of the long-term apps, right?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
it was kind of business as usual, whatever. We know there's problems, we'll deal with it, whatever.
Right.
But now they've both kind of pushed hard enough that you got everybody rattled up. And there's actually somebody else who coincidentally was an old timer from Twitter who got Blue Sky started, who kind of became the alternative. And now people are like, oh, well, he's here and we kind of like what's going on this way and he gets it. And, old Twitter is what we liked. And
Yeah.
also built it on a platform that anybody can quickly build apps for or whatever. So
And like
we'll see what happens.
I would note
You
that
know?
from what I've seen, what I've read about, like Blue Sky, the people who are running it. One of the things I saw they were writing about the other day was automated accounts. You know what I mean? Like the ones
Mhm.
that like post, this is everybody. It's the weekend on every Friday or whatever. But they said, they're not really cool with letting those sort of exist because a lot of them, they kind of show up as like tools to help social media, but they end up just being spam bots or
Yep.
ways for people to annoy and or harass other people, and that's gross. And they already know that. That's awesome. You know what I mean? They're aware of how these things are working and how they fit into that ecosystem, and they're also aware of how to get rid of them. So I love it. Blue Sky is great. Show up on there. We're on there. We're all three on there. Go show up at
Yep.
Blue
Yeah.
Sky. It'd be awesome.
I've been there for a
It's
while. I've already camped out, set up a spot. Like,
Oh
I'll just
yeah.
come hang out.
yeah.
Shoot.
Go check it
It
out.
is it is interesting to watch the life cycle of media apps, not just social media, but media apps.
Right.
And if you are confused and if you are scared, that's understandable. But there was life before Facebook. There was life before Twitter. There was life before any social media. There was life before the telephone. You can read articles in newspapers that are like, these kids reading books on the bus from like 1910, you know what I mean?
Oh
That are
yeah.
just like, why aren't they paying attention to the world? And that's kind of what people say about kids looking at their phones. And it's scary and it is intimidating, but you should look to the people that you identify as often on the cutting edge, often on the first early adopters. If you find someone who's like, huh, interesting, this magic creator who I've long respected and followed is now making this new type of content or is now making this new type of uh, social media. then you should consider that perhaps you're missing something. Very similar for me with TikTok. I was like, oh, I don't need TikTok. That's for the kids. And I was like, wait a second. People I respect are now using this application. Same with Discord.
Mm-hmm.
I was a late adopter of D&D Beyond for that matter.
Mm.
And it's like, wait a second. These creators that I respect and these people who are demonstrably very smart and understand trends are moving. And a lot of these early adopters are moving. And so I think that's worth paying attention to.
Yeah, low key, people want to hate on D&D Beyond, but it's a good app, dog. Like,
app.
it's a good app. Like,
It does what you want it to do. I mean, and somebody, Pharmacist Judge note that, how do they monetize it? I would expect them to monetize it like Twitter was before Musk bought it, which
Yeah.
was fine.
it'll
which was
eventually have
trending,
ads.
Yeah, which was
Yeah.
trending to profitability. They were well on
Yeah.
their way, and then everything went sideways, and it's garbage, and I
Yeah.
hate it. Thanks. Let's turn the corner now here to things that are not garbage, which are fun stuff like the finisher. So, we're ready for the set to go? The race is on, so tell me, what are you rooting for in the coming expansion, Ruben?
Well, one subculture that I want to tie in with is horse racing. There is big money there. And honestly, MTG is a lot like horse racing in that a talented jockey is the one who gets the trophy and the accolades. But when it comes down to it, it's just as much about the horse that brought you.
Wow. Power Dragon?
Well, it's not really racing, but battle bots. It feels like it could have a tie-in with Aetherdrift. And, I'm kind of hoping that when a card gets exiled, we just get to fling it out of the arena and it does real damage because, why not? Then damage actually does damage. And then just like battle bots, the eventual winner gets the giant nut. If you've ever watched it, it's actually really, really cool. I have a lot to say about BattleBots.
I love BattleBots. I love BattleBots.
Okay, off air, I'll hook you up with a channel you should watch on YouTube. Oh, so good. We'll talk about it after.
We'll talk about it later. All right. Well, look, I'm from Tennessee, and I lived in Florida and Virginia for long lengths of time. So I love me a NASCAR driver. This is a joke. So I'm looking forward to a secret lair featuring cards of Danica Patrick, Dale Earnhardt, and the greatest driver in the history of racing, Ricky Bobby. Because if you ain't first, you're last.
That's right.
There you go. And that ends
Iconic.
another
That don't even
live.
make sense. You could be third. You could be fifth. Like,
And that ends another live episode of Magic Mike's. Thanks for joining us here to discuss all things Magic. Thank you, Power Dragon.
hey, you're welcome. Man, we didn't get canceled. See, we did it.
We did it. Thank you, Ruben.
Man, we probably would have gotten more viewers this episode.
A little canceled. Just a little canceled, not a lot
Just
of
a
canceled.
little.
Just give me a little bit.
As a treat.
As a treat. A little canceling. Thank you. I'd like to move to our final slide. I want to thank our sponsor, Mana Traders, my co-host, Power Dragon, Ruben Bressler, and viewers like you for watching and listening. Please follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us on our exclusive member Discord. Subscribe to that Patreon, patreon.com/magicmics. Watch us live on Twitch. Join us live or taped on our YouTube channel. Check out our TikTok. Follow us on Blue Sky. Or join us here next week. Same time, same place for another episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.